This guy's interesting. They call it Dogbane mostly. You can tell by the seed pods here. And these things, they'd come along and they'd pick these and they'd use them for fiber to make stuff. You can kind of soak them a little bit and break them up in the bark. Let's see if I can break this one. Yeah, this is too crumbly. But it's got another name, Indian hemp. And the reason why they called it Indian hemp wasn't like you'll see on some websites where they say you can smoke the stuff like weed or something, but because it was actually a fiber plant that you can make rope and cloth from, just like hemp was grown for making rope and canvas originally. So, you know, rougher than cotton, but in some areas like this, it can be fairly readily available. In fact, I believe those are more of it right there, and there's probably a bunch of it around here that just hard to tell one stem from the other, except for the seed pods. But yeah, grow in fairly large quantities in the wild, and you could harvest it and make rope out of it. And over here, I can tell by the old seed pods there, that's a milkweed. And right next to the milkweed, I'm not sure if you can see it, that's a goldenrod with a gall on it. Goldenrods tend to get these galls. If it wasn't on a steep muddy hillside, I'd grab that one. But it's a survival thing. You find the last year's goldenrods with those galls, and inside that gall there's a little worm. Probably the best thing to do with the worm is actually kill it and eat it and get your protein that way, because it's a lot less effort to gather up a bunch of them and do that. But if you got some primitive fishing skills, it's a way to get bait in the middle of January. Find one of those little balls there, cut it open, find the worm, and put it on a hook or a gig and try your luck. You can tell by the seed heads, these are goldenrods here, but no galls on them. But it kind of gives you an idea. You can see some more over there. You can tell by these type of seed heads. There's several species, but they'll look somewhat similar with the seed heads. And from there, you should be able to find one every, I don't know, maybe 100 or so stalks. You can tell there's quite a few of them over there. Find one of them galls. And these all seem to be somewhat ailing. I believe they're Scots pine, actually. They're non-native planted tree. These ones are dead. These ones look a little bit better. Here's one a little bit closer up. Here's one of these galls. You can see a hole there, so maybe this guy already either got eaten by a bird or perhaps he emerged as a bug already. This might be more than a year old, but this would be the thing you would cut open looking for that worm there. And basically an insect lays an egg inside, and the plant forms like a scar tissue protective chamber around it, and the plant goes on with its life. But the insect gets to grow just sitting inside there, nursing off the juices of the plant, and you know, has a wall protecting it from predators, except for those with sharp little beaks that peck into them. And here's that gall. I figured I went this far down the rabbit hole, even if there's not an actual caterpillar inside. I cut it open to show you what it looks like. Maybe living in that little area right there, you'd see a little tiny caterpillar grub looking thing. And yeah, that's it. Usually they're completely covered over, wouldn't have any kind of a big hole in them unless Either it got out on its own and turned into whatever insect, or something else poked a hole in there and ate them. This is just your, most people call it a black raspberry. It's Rubus something or other, I can't remember off the top of my head. But it also has these neat, very decorative looking purplish canes that get this sort of whitish bloom on it. It's thorny, not the worst thorniness on it, and it does have nice berries. So, someplace to remember for summer. Here's your more common. This is probably Rubus allegheniensis. That's the common, as we call it, jaggerbush. They grow everywhere. They have blackberries, but they are thorny and a pain in the ass to walk through. Just more of the birds enjoying another staghorn sumac. Among them, the first robins of spring or the last robins of last year, one of the two. Sometimes they do overwinter. And here in one of these artificially tractor maintained fields in the game lands here, you got these sort of flat topped, purplish colored flower stems, for lack of a better way of putting it, with these umbels on top. Sometimes you get asters and such too, but I believe these ones with the darker colored stems are actually ironweed. Lots of ironweed and Eupatorium grows in this area. Also, we get some other interesting stuff. More of the goldenrods up in here too. Here's a close-up. Those oak galls on a branch that fell down. You don't know why they get them. Shingle oaks get them the worst, so I'm assuming just by the number of galls, this is a shingle oak. See, the tree's just loaded with them. And shingle oak's one of the weird ones that has, for lack of a better way to put it, leaf-shaped leaves. They're just sort of, in fact, you can see some hanging on right there. I mean, they're just sort of long oval with a little bit of a point at the end, and not really much else is, you know, no real lobes or indentations or anything else on them. So, at any rate, a little closer look straight up at all them galls. Just a little note on engineering in general and the importance of proper backfill, and often like bentonite dams and things like that. You look right down through this hole in the road and you can see the water just going through the soil right past the pipe. The pipe's on the left there, and the water's just going through the ditch that they excavated to put the pipe in, and yeah, not the best construction. Yeah, just looking at the so-called Christmas fern, which is evergreen. There's another fern kind of mixed in here, which is also evergreen, but these guys kind of beat up here because they're on the side of the trail. This is your typical Christmas fern. Try to find one. They normally come to more of a point at the end. Yeah, like these guys up here. That's an entire one. And there's some ground pine or club moss, depending on what you want to call it up there. But they call them Christmas ferns because they're evergreen like a Christmas tree, I guess. But a whole bunch of it along the trail here. In the other game lands over in South Beaver Township now. Okay, here's a young sassafras. You can see the bark, the general thing here. But then you can see the smaller branches, how the smooth bark on the smaller branches is. And he's not really budding that much yet, but still see that same sort of weird kind of lumpy, wavy shape they can get. Although sometimes they can be straight for a while, but usually the top still has that weird multiple curve look to it. You can see it in the other ones here. Just a little vernal pool. Not much going on here. It's been a very warm winter, but yet there are other years where I have seen some activity already as far as spring peepers and or spotted salamanders or newts when there was still a little bit of snow on the ground and you just got a little bit of a thaw for a day and they suddenly just come out. But apparently not this year. Maybe the groundhog was wrong. Two, I guess, teenage size red cedars. They're called red cedars because they get a reddish tinge a lot of the time in winter. And they'll have two types of needles. They'll have some really shaggy ones like these. And then as the foliage matures, in fact when they're seedlings they're all the jaggy stuff, it turns more scale-like as they get older. And it's all on the same tree. And I don't see any berries, but I'll get bluish berries. And the berries will persist long into the winter. And they also get these little gall-looking things. Sometimes these can be kind of wet and oozy looking in the summer. That is your cedar apple rust. I've got some on my mom's backyard that get this really bad because they're right next to a bunch of apple trees. There's another one over there hiding. It's kind of wild he's under a tree because he's really don't like shade. Just a quick shot at the landscape here. I'm on the trail, but you look off the side of the trail and it's just lumps and little divots. If you go off trail wandering around here, it's like an egg crate. It's easy to get lost because the form of the land is basically flat with all these egg crate looking mounds and little spaces between the mounds because this all used to be strip mine, I believe. So, and this is unusual because we're at the very northwest corner of Beaver County, so this area actually would have been glaciated. People argue with me about it all the time, but if you look at a map, it comes down all of Lawrence County and it cuts off a little area of Beaver County, and you know, I'm not the one who mapped it there. It's not like it obeys some sort of geopolitical boundaries that were set up by European settlers thousands of years later. When the glaciers came, they didn't see no boundaries. So yeah, this is the glaciated portion of Beaver County.